Hi, and welcome back to another monthly market update for the Columbus, Ohio real estate market. I'm Ryan Deeter with Key Realty, here to bring you the monthly update. I'm going to share my screen as we do most of these updates. We're going to go through some statistics and data that the Columbus Board of Realtors provides for us. So let me share my screen so we can pull those up for you. As you can see here, these are the February numbers that came out this month. So we always get them a month after it's month of March today. So we'll see February numbers. It helps us predict kind of where things are going with the market and see, what's going on in the past. So some things I always like to look at are, obviously the closed sales, are things, what direction are the number of closings going? This is something to keep an eye on as buyers' demand is what's driving this market. If you've been following me along for the last several videos, if you haven't checked out my 2022 yearly forecast, check that out. So I talk a lot about the last year and where I think this year is headed. And we're kind of seeing, so far I'm kind of right on par with this. Obviously tomorrow things can change completely, but so far we've been on par with seeing very similar numbers as we saw in 2021. And so what I'm looking at is it's not necessarily the inventory shortage that's driving this market. It's the buyer demand, because we actually saw more homes sell in 2021 than we have since 2010. So really had a record year last year in the amount of homes and amount of listings, but it's the buyer demand that's causing causing the prices to increase and causing this to continue to be a very, very competitive seller's market for the most part. I still think it makes sense as buyers to continue to buy, but at the same time, the sellers have most of the leverage when it comes to price and conditions. So with that said, one thing I always check first is just how many closes we've had. We actually have an uptick from last year. So that means we're on track to even continue to have these numbers even higher than 2021. Again, that was a record year. So if they're still going up, that means buyer demand is still very high. Another thing is how long on average our houses sitting on the market. So that's actually gone down as well. So those are two signs saying that buyer demand is still very high right now. And the big news that we've had in the real estate world right now is interest rates. You probably heard that the Federal Reserve raised the interest. Now it's not 1-to-1 with mortgage interest and the Federal Reserve interest rates, but mortgage, it does impact that, of course, and mortgage rates are going to go up. They've gone up already this month, and we'll see. I think next month will be really telling on is the buyer demand still still going to drive this market and still going to be that. Now I think we're seeing a little bit of almost a panic right now of call it that if you want, buyers saying, oh shoot, the Fed's going to continue to raise rates, so we better jump on something now if we had a plan in the next year or so. Let's speed that plan up and try to get in something right now before those rates go even higher. So we're maybe seeing that right now. And so that may help, slow things down in the future. But at the same time, if those interest rates do rise, you're going to be paying more for it, whether it's in a price increase and or interest rate increase, you're going to be paying more monthly. And personally, I would rather have a price increase versus interest rate increase, because even though you're paying more if the prices increase, if you have to turn around and sell it, at least you're paying off your mortgage more so than interest. When interest rates go higher, it's the banks and the Federal Reserve that actually get more of your monthly payment versus paying off towards principal and your loan balance, if that makes sense. I don't want to dwell on that too much. Happy to have that conversation with you if you want to dive into that and why it still makes sense to buy in this market if you're looking to buy. But if you're not, needing to buy or don't have a place to sell, it can be a tough market to wrap your head around and say, okay, is now the time to buy or not? By looking at these numbers and trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future can give you the confidence to say, to make a decision, whether it's I'm going to sit out this market and kind of see where things go, or I got to buy now before prices continue to go up or interest rates go up. So we're hearing all kinds of stuff. We're hearing stuff about a crash. We're hearing stuff like that. Personally, I don't think there's going to be a crash. Will there be a correction? Possibly, but possibly not. That's the reality of this market right now. It could continue to go up at a 10 to 15 to 20% appreciation rate year after year for the next several years if the Columbus market continues to add, substantial amounts of population and job growth like we are predicting to do. So with that said, things I'm also looking at here, obviously always are the median sell price compared. This is the average sell price. We're just below that 300,000 price point compared to last year, as you see here. And that's an 11% increase. Now, if you actually jump back, this is the February 21 numbers to kind of see, I like to compare the difference in, appreciation growth and or all this growth, because that's what I think we're going to start seeing. It's not necessarily a price decrease by any means, maybe a slowdown in the growth percentage. So not necessarily, you're not going to see, homes get cheaper, but just the appreciation growth slow down and not go quite as quick. That's my prediction. Again, it's just a prediction. I said this last year as well, and we had, some record area appreciations as well. So it is a little slower as we're seeing. It was a 13% appreciation rate last year compared to this year at 11%, just over 11 there. So those are things to consider. The other things I'm looking at as well as, kind of trying to figure out what's going on in the future is the inventory levels. You can see here, we actually, inventory for homes was a little higher, but we had a little higher of closings. So therefore we're really at the same number of inventory supply numbers as we saw last year. So 0% change there. And I'm sure, again, I want to reiterate this point that you're hearing about an inventory shortage all over the news and all over the country. And anyone you talk to, a lot of people in the real estate industry don't even understand this, that we don't have a supply issue. It's a buyer demand. We have just so much buyers out there that things are going so quick. And so that's why you've got to be prepared in this market. If you're going to be a buyer in this market, you have to be prepared to make a quick offer and to make your offer as clean and as enticing to the seller as possible. I saw an article yesterday that 1 in 4 offers in Columbus are cash. Depending on the area, of course, that's the Columbus area as a whole. So depending on the area, there's areas that are more cash than others. But you got as a buyer, if you're not doing cash, have to make your offer, as competitive as to a cash offer as possible in this market, because that's the key. That's what you're competing against statistically. So there are ways to do that. And there's ways to help, and happy to dive into that with you too, if you'd like. Just send me a message and we can set that up. The last thing I want to kind of touch base today is kind of this graph here. This goes back to 13, as we can see, and you can see it's up and to the right, but it's up and down. This is, you saw 2020 year here, just kind of a little bit more of an anomaly than the last few years, have a little bit more of a peak than a climb. What we're seeing here is, where we are. We saw this spring. This is the spring market here last year, and that's where the largest spike really hit in 21. That really drove those numbers up. Flatlined, dipped down a little bit, and which is a typical dip when it goes into the fall, winter, and then comes back up. So what I'm predicting right now, and this is where I'm going to predict, is something similar to this we saw last year. This spike in the spring and then a flat line in the summer. That's kind of what I anticipate this year. Maybe not quite as drastic as we saw some areas with this is like a 20%. Right now we're like right here, so we're not quite seeing the large appreciation jump as we did in like the middle of spring. We're at the peak of spring market right now. We're at the beginning of the spring market, the peak. So we really saw things just start flying. So we could even see a larger increase in appreciation and just people making offers over list prices and driving that appreciation up, for the next several months, as we did in the previous years. How much that would be, it's hard to say with interest rates ticking up, because that's a real strain on buyers right now. Is whenever that interest rate goes up, the monthly payment goes up, and that's really what buyers are being qualified by, and or what they're really buying into is not necessarily, especially unless you're paying cash, you're buying a monthly payment, not necessarily the list price of the house. So people have to understand what they're comfortable with monthly, to buy this house, and what they're comfortable paying monthly to live in the house that they're potentially going to buy. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this kind of gives you an idea if you're in the market or considering going into the market. This will give you kind of an idea of where things are. I'm always happy to talk about this. Again, I always say this is a lot of the Columbus area, not necessarily a certain area of Columbus, but the whole MLS data that the MLS, the multiple listing service, and the Columbus board collects, and they send this out as a whole. Each county or each little community of Columbus, we can even break this down into your community if you're looking to make a move or wanting to buy or sell in a certain area. We can give you a little bit more specific data that actually fits your area a little bit better to give you an idea of what to expect and break that down. But always happy to have that individual conversation if you're interested. So again, thanks for tuning in. I'm Ryan Deeter with Key Realty, and I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.